across all bauxite parishes at a total cost of $110.4 million during the 2024-25 financial year. Additionally, 5 projects were undertaken at a cost of $28.93 million to date during the 2025-26 financial year. The requested support of $400 million from the Capital Development Fund is therefore necessary to allow the JBI to finance the implementation of Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program. These activities are geared towards strengthening livelihoods, enhancing community infrastructure, and supporting socioeconomic development across the bauxite parishes. Madam Speaker, it is proposed that a withdrawal of $400 million be made from the Capital Development Fund in line with the Bauxite Production Levy Act and Cabinet's Decision 23/25 dated June 16, 2025, granting approval for withdrawal and implementation of Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program during the 2025 to 2028 period. Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
Thanks, Minister. Those in favor? Those. Oh, no.
Thank you. Wait to be recognized. I'm waiting to be recognized.
Member Warmington.
I'm waiting to be recognized by the Speaker. Now shut your mouth.
The member from South Manchester on the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I couldn't allow this motion to be passed without speaking on behalf of the constituency that I represent, South Manchester. But Central is in a similar situation, so I can speak to both. He's here to speak for himself. Madam Speaker, this resolution speaks to extracting a sum of $400 million from the Capital Development Fund for use in the implementation of Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program over the years 2025, 26, 27, and 28. That's $100 million per year for all the constituencies that are affected by bauxite. Shut your mouth and listen up. Madam Speaker, that $100 million a year is really an embarrassment. If that entire amount was used in South Manchester, it wouldn't begin to dent the work that needs to be done in that constituency. It's quite frankly inconsequential relative to the needs of these constituencies. And if I speak specifically to South Manchester, Madam Speaker, if you were to visit many communities that have suffered, that have endured bauxite mining for decades, Broadleaf, Harmons, Prattville, Asia, Perrins, Lancaster. Some of these areas have been mined out and there are still pits unreclaimed decades after they have been mined. When you go in some of these communities, you could only describe the landscape as post-apocalyptic. And this is not because of the recent hurricane. This has been in that condition for decades. Right now, there are schools which are struggling to reopen in South Manchester. Still don't have power. Prattville Primary, Winston Jones. The billions that have been extracted from the immediate environs of these schools. In fact, to get to Winston Jones, Winston Jones is marooned. It's like an island and mined out all around the school. And yet they don't have a generator or a solar system that they can continue operating. The school has an agricultural department. They have hundreds of pounds of chickens that they've produced, which are at risk of spoiling because they have no electricity. And yet, billions have been extracted. Billions of dollars have been extracted and continue to be extracted from these areas. Billions in US. The member from Western St. Andrew is correcting me. In law, the mined out pits are supposed to be reclaimed within a fixed period of time. What the companies appear to be doing is mining out about 95% or 97% of the bauxite. And they leave a little corner of the mined out pit. And they call it an open pit. They haven't finished it because there's a few truckloads left to be removed. And that seems to relieve them of the responsibility indefinitely, because some of those have been in that state now since 2010 and earlier. The JBI, which is being given this money to implement the program, behaves often as if they are an advocate for the industry, not an advocate for the communities that are impacted by bauxite mining. The mining, the Commissioner of Mines and the Department of Mines, which also has a role in terms of enforcing the appropriate regulations, they also seem to have been neutered. The benefits that the country gets from bauxite aluminum mining today is a trickle compared with what it was in its heyday. And I have made a recommendation in this house many times before, and this is not a partisan recommendation. This is coming from my perhaps unique experience of representing 3 different constituencies that are heavily impacted by bauxite alumina operations. Originally Southeast Clarendon, where the Jamalco plant is, then Central Manchester, where the Kirkvine plant is, and mining took place, and now South Manchester, which is literally honeycombed with bauxite alumina mining, with bauxite mining going to the alumina plant. This is an industry where we have not matched the expenses to mitigate the environmental damage with the revenues that the companies are earning. I have made a recommendation, Minister, before you had that responsibility, and I will repeat it now, that each ton of bauxite taken out, each ton of bauxite extracted, an amount of money should be put in escrow so that whatever happens down the road, there is money available for reclamation, for other environmental mitigation. I've had responses that it sounds like a good idea. But I made that recommendation, I think, the first time in 2008. And we still haven't had any action in that regard. What we have today is an industry where there's not a lot of reinvestment taking place. In fact, there is huge exposure. There's huge exposure to communities in St. Ann, where lands have been taken, but persons have not been paid. Contractors are used for mining. Contractors are used for haulage. Contractors are used for loading at the plant. Labor contractors are used to provide casual labor. All of these payables amount to hundreds of millions of dollars. I discovered via questions in the Senate that Petrojam at one time was owed $8 million by one company. And there may be reasons why some people prefer not to hear what I'm saying. Because we know there are a lot of vested interests around. You know, so when you throw stone in hog pen, the one small. So, Madam Speaker, I would say even in this time of the more transient crisis that has been brought on by Hurricane Melissa, even getting a response from the companies that are operating to assist the communities in this regard is very difficult. We had an allocation for trucking water, and I know that conventionally or usually the companies truck water in the communities where mining is taking place. I tried to reach out to the company to say, well, at least tell me what areas you are going to be covering so that we don't duplicate the trucking of the water and the little allocation can go as far as possible. Not even the courtesy of a response from the company as the elected representative of the people. So, Madam Speaker, I believe we have to, this industry is in its twilight. And in a sense, they say it's you know, the last kick of a dying mule is what you must be careful of. We need to be double our vigilance in terms of monitoring the environmental risks and the impact that these operations are having on our communities. It's not coincidental that when we look at the poverty surveys, these communities rank among the most or amongst the poorest of our communities. They should have been reflecting the benefits of the value that has been extracted out of this. And I say 400 million, 100 million Jamaican per year scattered across a number of affected constituencies. This is really an insult to the people, and I cannot support that.
The member from Manchester Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, through you, I'd like to ask the Minister of Finance a few questions pertaining to the order that she has brought to the House. Can the Minister say why it has taken 5 years for another constituency development project? This is phase 8. Phase 7 was in 2020. And just by the minister's admittance, that this program is supposed to be every 3 to 4 years. Why has it taken 5 years for constituencies that have been affected by bauxite to be seeing any resources, any at all? Secondly, can the minister say if there will be an increase over the measly sum of $4 million that has been given to constituencies like Northwest Manchester every 3 to 4 years for projects financed through this program? Can the minister also say which are the projects, that $1 billion that she mentioned in the last financial year, were these projects? Which communities, which constituencies were they done in, and how much was spent on each of these projects? Because I know constituencies like mine in Northwest Manchester saw no additional projects outside of the $4 million that was attributed to Northwest Manchester in 2020. And a member from South Manchester is saying that he saw none in southern Manchester also. And last question, will we be seeing the regular allotment to these constituencies and not when it is that the administration see fit that constituencies that have been affected by bauxite will see the regular flow of funds coming from the CDF?
Next is the member from St. Catherine.
Madam Speaker, I have no problem with the position taken by the member from South Manchester as it relates to reclamation by the bauxite companies. But I have a problem with the part of his presentation as it relates to the amount being allocated to those constituencies that have to do with bauxite. He spoke about 100 million per year over 3 years. But the issue is that the amount that's allocated to those constituencies is not to get 100 million divided per year. Is that the amount you get a chance to deal with that over 3 years, the procurement and the implementation of projects. He also said that it's an embarrassment and insult of 100 million per year. I must know what I'm talking about when I need no help from you. I am saying, just hear me first, man. Hear me first. Rust, man, just behave. I am saying, I didn't call the name. You can't call my name. It was a constituent, it was a Rastaman. But when it started, it was under Dr. Paul Robertson. And those constituents that they mined bauxite from got 2 million per year. Southwest St. Catherine got $1 million over that period, during the period when they got 2 million. It was former member of the Shaw that increased the amount from 2 to 4. And the amount for country like mine from 1 to 2. But remember, I was sat in cabinet over these years. He didn't advocate then for serious increase then. But now you find it convenient to ask it now. It's hypocritical. He made some good points in the presentation. But when you talk about the amount, bro, you just come back, that's why you don't understand. It's not a statement, minister, no. It's not a statement, minister. It's not a statement, you just come back, learn a little bit. Some say, Madam Speaker, it's hypocritical for the member to criticize the amount. When he left here, was 2 million. He now come back, comes back and is now 4 million. He never objected on that Dr. Paul Robertson and his cabinet. But you know me tell the truth, Mikhail. You know me tell the truth. So I do disagree with him now. That it could have been increased or can be increased, but never criticize it under his government. So no criticize now.
The member from Southeast St. Anne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Bauxite Mining Community Development Program. If you ask the people of Southeast St. Anne, that's a contradiction in terms. Because the constituency, as you've heard from the other members, not only the exploitative nature of mining, but the relationship between the companies and the citizens. There are places where, I tell you, as we speak, the noise, the dust, the roads that are unsafe for the people of the communities to use. And so when we talk about a community development program, it needs to be one that speaks to actually helping the people to be better as a result of mining. And that used to be the case because some of the communities in my constituency that were built in the 1970s, the Golden Groves, those communities were built on bauxite. What we're seeing now is that a lot of the communities, once the mining starts in the vicinity even of the communities, they begin to go south. They degrade. So, Madam Speaker, I speak not only for Southeast St. Anne, because I know my neighbor in Southwest has a very similar challenge. But I tell you that the open pits that have been there for many years, they are a risk to not only the farmers, but their livelihood. They don't have the land to use for production. They don't have the safety of moving around. They don't have the safety of the children being able to move freely in these communities because of the risk associated with these open pits. And so, yes, it's a risk to the people, to their health. And of course, the mining companies have tried to explain away why it is that they keep them open. In addition, Madam Speaker, much of the lands of Southeast St. Anne are controlled by or in the hands of mining companies, some of which have not been used, will never be used, but are not being made available for use by the people. And especially at this time, when we think about the role of agriculture and the need to increase productivity, I think it's high time that we think of a relationship that is going to be beneficial and truly develop the communities. And this funding that we're talking about, this money, is insufficient. Not insufficient as a response. And so we should be thinking about what the relationship more broadly could be, including access to the assets of the companies for use in a developmental way in the communities. So I would like to ask of the minister as well, have we assessed the effect of mining on communities? Is there any cost-benefit analysis done? And if so, could you share? If not, can you commit to doing one in order that we truly understand what this industry is doing to our communities? In terms of the projects which you speak of, which have been done over the past phases, have they been assessed? And similarly, what returns, what effect have they had on the communities? Madam Speaker, in order for us to really serve the communities and develop them, we need to rethink how mining is taking place. I get calls and messages from Taylor Corner, where the ponds that are set aside for the animals have been filled up with the silt that runs off from the mining areas into the communities. And their appeal to the mining companies oftentimes falls on deaf ears. And as you heard from my colleague member, sometimes not even the MP gets a response, let alone members of the community. And so if we're able to get it right, I think this could work to the benefit of communities. But as it stands right now, it is not serving, it is not doing justice to our communities. I thank you.
Thank you, member. The member from St. Elizabeth Southwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as the matter that is before the House directly touches and concerns matters under my portfolio, I thought it important to speak on the motion, especially in relation to the need now for the allocation, as has been said by some members, for the Bauxite Community Development Program to be able to continue. Clearly, Madam Speaker, I have heard the various members who represent mining constituencies, and I want to assure them that all of the concerns that they have raised, whether it be in relation to the mining sector in general or in relation to the Bauxite Community Development Program, is something that I will take on board. And I will also commit to having a meeting with all the members of Parliament who represent mining communities so that we can fetter out some of these challenges that they continue to have. Because I believe ultimately we have the same mission and vision for the most part, which is to ensure that these mining communities see real benefit from mining in our country. Madam Speaker, I think it's important as we reflect on the motion. I know it is easy to speak about the bauxite industry as it is now, and at least the member from Southeast St. Anne did speak about the gains that we have had over the years from the bauxite industry and from our mining sector. And I believe we must not leave that behind, because the reality, there are a number of communities, towns that were built through our bauxite and mining industry, a number of schools, community centers that were built through our bauxite industry, Mandeville as we know it, St. Elizabeth Technical as we know it, Manchester High School as we know it. All of these are legacies from our mining bauxite sector. So yes, there are issues that we have in relation to some of the environmental challenges, but the reality is that a number of our towns, a number of our families were employed, have been employed, and have seen real benefit from the mining sector. In fact, even as we speak, the mining sector still pays the highest average salary to workers in our country. And when we think that mining is no longer important, when our tourism dollars went with COVID-19, it is the mining sector that held up our export earnings and kept us afloat. And I think even as we levy some of the criticism, that some of it is justified, that we put it in full context. Even if we speak about one company owing $8 million, that which was subsequently paid, it again speaks to how important that business is for Petrojam as an entity of the government. So the reality is that bauxite and mining in general is still important, but I do agree that there are some things that have happened in the past that we have to put a stop to. So as Minister of Mining, I have said that the mining companies are to, that the Commissioner of Mines is to take a zero tolerance approach in relation to the rehabilitation of pits, so that there is no new pit added to the backlog, and that we are to start urgently treating with the fees that are to be collected in relation to the backlog, and to ensure that the companies treat with the backlog of pits. One company at least has started that process, and we have sent out letters. The commissioner has sent out letters, and that is my clear position. Because unless the pits are repurposed for use in agriculture, and I will speak to that, but they should be filled in keeping with the legislation. We are also going to be doing a review, have started a review in relation to the specifications for rehabilitation. Because I've heard from enough persons and farmers that when the land is rehabilitated, enough topsoil is not there. So it makes it very difficult. And we plan to come to the House with changes to that regime. So I want to assure the members, and again, when we sit and meet, I will take some of your suggestions to see how in changing that regime, we can come to some common place. I do find, in general, the comments on the JBI a little unfortunate, right? I do appreciate that they have a balancing act, because they do act as the entity that provides scientific research, that provides some level of direction, guidance, especially in relation to the question of reserves for our bauxite industry, while also leading the charge on community development. But I think there is enough work that has been done under this program that people can say that good work has happened. So whether it be the Broadleaf Health Center that was rehabilitated, whether it be the fact that we now have a model in the world for how you repurpose former bauxite lands, and that model is by establishing greenhouse clusters, which we've done in multiple places, including Blue Mountain, Rose Hill, and Content, all of those in Manchester. And the Content cluster is so well renowned that when the president of the World Bank visited Jamaica, the first place he went to was to visit the farmers in Content. Because what the JBI has done in Content is to establish a cluster of greenhouses using farmers who used to farm on that land, probably about 40 farmers. Each now has their own greenhouse. Clearly they use communal activities to do pruning, things of that nature, and utilize the ponds. Instead of filling the ponds, put in pond liners and then get the water, retain the water, and use that water to drive the greenhouse cluster. One of the things that we want to do in this allocation is to rapidly expand that into more parts of St. Anne. I heard a member from Southeast St. Anne, both Southeast and Southwest. We have a model now that we can rapidly expand. And just to tell you, to put it in perspective, after Hurricane Beryl, when we went up to that Content cluster, they had taken down their plastic that covered the greenhouses. So they were able to quickly get back up and running. And they were the primary source of sweet peppers, cherry tomatoes in that Christmas season, making a lot of money. And again, because they had the ponds and they had the water. They've also done, under the development, tablets in schools programs. They have rehabilitated schools. One thing that I said last year, and some of the members would not be here, we want to embark on bigger projects. We have set a target that none of these bauxite communities should be without piped water. And that is one of the things that we want, that none of these bauxite communities should be without pipe water. It is a travesty that over the years, these communities have gone without pipe water while the industry does use a lot of water. So we have a project already in Manchester. It may be in South. I think it is in South. I'll speak to you about it, right? That we're working with the companies to put in the pipes from some of this money to get pipe water into those communities. And what we want to do in all of the areas, identify these communities, and again, tap into the bauxite, tap into the Capital Development Fund. So I say this to say, this 400 million clearly is part of our regular drawdown. But I have already, and the minister, I think I can go as far as said, has agreed that we should look at two things. One, some of these capital intensive projects, which this 400 million may not be able to support, and do a pullout in relation to that in our bauxite communities. So we may be coming very soon with another order. And additionally, I have said to the minister, and the minister agrees, that for our post-Melissa recovery, some allocation should also come. And as such, we're putting an appropriate submission together to pull down some more to help our bauxite communities in that regard. The two more things that I will say quickly. I agree, just in general, that one of the reasons that mining is now with agriculture is to move more of those lands into agriculture, right? And I tell you that we already have the model. Additionally, the member who spoke from Northwest Manchester can be assured that program in this 400 million is an increase in the allocation to members of parliament, right? That is program, and yes, you will have a regular allocation, right? So you will have timely, you will know when, so that you can plan for it. It was something that the member raised the last time, and I had assured him that we will get it done. The last thing I will say is that clearly, as we continue to manage, as we continue to look at how do we balance the critical economic impact from mining with the challenges that our communities may have, we're about to unveil a mobile application that will allow members of the community in real time to complain of issues they're having with these companies. Not just bauxite, speak a lot about bauxite, but we do have issues sometimes with sand mining. We do have issues sometimes with limestone mining. And as such, we're going to use the technology, and you will hear more about that. So I rise to support the motion. Clearly, it is critical, as the member had said. It's something that we would have wanted even before. So now that it is before us, I believe, one, that we should move quickly to have the allocation done. Let us have our meeting, and we'll pull you in as we go back to the Ministry of Finance to get some of these bigger projects done, and definitely some post-Melissa recovery. Thank you, Speaker.
Member from St. Catherine Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. St. Catherine Northwest is the home of the Windalco bauxite plant. And while I heard of the multiplicity of things the bauxite industry may have contributed in its very long history, and none of us in Northwest St. Catherine could claim that there's no benefit to bauxite. It is a chief employer of most persons in Northwest St. Catherine. And as far as the multiplier effect is extensive. However, this bill before us that states $4 million for each MP, I believe, Madam Speaker, is evidence to each constituency, to each bauxite affected constituency. Yes, the amount is. Yes. We know what it is. Yes, we know what it is. Yeah? Yes. But it's allocation of 100 million, and I want to be very open so that my constituents don't believe that we have 100 million. That is 100 million to all, divided among all of them. And to that extent, simple mathematics would suggest that if there's any equity, it's no more than $4 to $5 million per person. To that extent, Madam Speaker, I think it proves that there is no real plan for life after bauxite. It has been indicated that bauxite should have between 10 and 15 years left of effective and efficient production. And we have the history and evidence of life after banana. We have the history and evidence of life after sugarcane. And we see how the suffering had come to those communities that were once dependent for employment and activity. We see in this plan no industry development proposal. We have not seen a life after bauxite plan being put forward for any community. I have not seen it for Northwest St. Catherine, and I am not sure if the other MPs have seen one, but there is no such plan for us to say we are going into this replacement industry. We are going into this replacement activity. And to that extent, it seems as if we are running full speed into the abyss with no plan for the people that are currently directly dependent on the bauxite industry. Indeed, indeed, Madam Speaker, we have seen without any conversation the end of what the public call dust money, the contribution to the community due to the nuisance of the dust from bauxite. I see the minister is a little engaged at this point, but this dust money that used to come to the communities have ended with no conversation to the communities where they would get a quarterly contribution for the dust nuisance that would come from it. In Northwest St. Catherine, we know that the bauxite industry have robbed us of the river. Multiple slates of pollution coming into the river that has caused for not only the economic viability of fishing, but the recreational activity of swimming. I have not, Madam Speaker, I'm asking for your protection.
Members, the member is asking you to allow him to speak. While on his feet, he should be heard.
Madam
Go
Speaker.
ahead, member from St. Catherine West.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, we have been robbed of our rivers. The constant pollution has caused for the habit of recreation in our rivers to end because persons have identified the probability of pollution in the river. We have the caustic pollution. We have seen on multiple occasions the fish kills within the same spaces that we have not been able to benefit from. Madam Speaker, we have also seen where a lot of agriculture are not conducive to the space because especially vegetables suffer under the dust created by the bauxite plant. I speak as well for a school called Charlemont High School that is in direct proximity to what is called the Mud Lake. And at Charlemont, listen, I went by nearly 3,000, so you can talk to me when I get closer. Madam Speaker, Charlemont High School have reported a multiplicity of reports of breathing problems among their children. And to that extent, we have not seen that level of investment coming from bauxite. Let's give an example, Madam Speaker, of a place with the production of bauxite. We have no clinic in Louidersville of any worth. The clinic in Louidersville falling apart. We have no clinic in Tradeways, not falling apart, non-existent in Tradeways. The clinic in Linstead, has been asking for a dressing table to dress wounds that come to that clinic. This is a bauxite community. So with all of the conversations of how great this bauxite is, the limited interface that we have seen suggests to me that the bauxite industry is not playing a satisfactory role in the space. I join my colleague from St. Anne about a hidden problem with the bauxite industry. While it is that many a farmer is robbed of the areas that were mined, the ownership of the bauxite industry of other lands not mined and not being able to be utilized has robbed our communities of economic and housing opportunities because they hold them dear to simply ownership. These are not mined out. You know the bauxite, leave me alone. Madam Speaker, of course, we want to focus on the rehabilitation of the mined out lands. Of course, we want to find usage of mined out lands. But I say to you, Madam Speaker, that there is no way we could claim that 14, 15, 20 greenhouses could be a legitimate plan of replacement for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 dependent individuals on that thing. A more extensive development. And while Minister, not criticizing that start, what I'm saying is that I can identify thousands of acres not being mined but under ownership of the bauxite that they have not allowed for usage. And it is creating in some of our constituencies a facilitator of criminal activity through squatting on these lands, right? And also through non-utilization. Additionally, I lost there by 200 votes. Additionally, Madam Speaker, I join the member from South Manchester about the lack of coordination and facilitation of the bauxite industry towards the people's representatives as member of parliaments in the area. It is not unusual that the bauxite industry would give scholarships and without knowledge of whom they gave the scholarships to, that the member of parliament office double dip with those individuals, and regardless of requests, that has never been granted, neither to us nor our request sent to them for that to be done. They give no consideration to the people's representatives. Madam Speaker, the rust of the roofs caused by the dust from the bauxite cannot be replaced by the limited contributions that are being given. If we should give 10 sheets of zinc, 6 pieces a lot, and 2 pounds a nail, that's $52,000. This amount might give 80 individuals a contribution. Any bauxite community, in particular those in the production communities, the caustic is causing extensive damage to roof, extensive damage to crop, and extensive damage to furniture. I don't know of the lifestyle. Madam Speaker, I hope the minister can also imply and indicate to us how much money is currently owed to the treasury by these bauxite companies. It is our information that quite a bit is still owed to the government by these bauxite companies. And we'll also like to know for how long this has been owed, because this is a key indicator as to why we are not benefiting sufficiently from the bauxite plant. I welcome a statement from the minister that no bauxite entity or constituency community should be without water. I know piped water. I know that Windalco have its own well, for example. And we hope that as a part of its contribution to the community, that Windalco will consider in a more permanent way to provide for that into our constituencies. So we are happy that this is before us, but we are concerned that what is being granted through a institution is not sufficient to plan for life after bauxite, nor to mitigate the negatives, the cost of the negatives that the bauxite industry has created. With that, Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Minister,
Madam Speaker, just to answer a few of the questions from the members. The member from Northwest Manchester asked about the various phases. And member, you will recall that in 2020, in that phase, 300 million was allocated, but we were in COVID at the time, 2020, 2021. So there were not too many projects. But when I look at the history of the spend, I see that in 2022, there was an allocation of 268 million. And in 2024, 282. And now in 2025, 400 million. With regards to your $1 billion, the question about $1 billion, I wasn't quite sure what you were referring to, Minister. Was that question? Okay. And for the member from Southeast St. Anne, you would have gotten some of the answers to your question from the minister. You had asked about the impact of mining on communities, as well as projects, how are they being assessed? And the minister would like for you to know that there is a Bauxite Community Council that sits to consider these projects. So, Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member, State Minister Whittle, would you please proceed?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. House Leader? Oh. 1 minute, House Leader, sorry. Mr. Whittle?
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the motion be approved.
Oh, those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader? Public business. Hold on, Member Warrington.
In public business, we have one.
No. Public business.
I'm asking if you would allow the member who in a previous sitting, well, Minister Warmington wishes to debate some of his motions
Member.
that he,
Member.
former Minister Warmington wishes to
Member.
debate.
Not minister.
Well, Member Warmington wishes to debate some of his motions. We're asking if you would allow him to start his debate. Yes.
That's what I make it clearer. Damn man, talk. You want to cut and go back up there? Close. Huh? Don't bubble business first. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect the collection. You will make trouble. And I'm going to shop it today. Who says so? Madam Speaker.
Before you commence, member, you are being permitted by the House to only do one motion today, which is the first one on your list of 6 private members' motion. I'm only now advised that it was your wish and hope to do all 6 of them.
Madam Speaker. Oh, just a minute.
No, respectfully.
Standing Order
respect the
23
member.
makes clear that a private member's motion cannot be debated before 6 days after it's published in Standing Order and not beyond 21 days. Today is 21 days for these 6 private members' motion. It will not take me more than 5 minutes to deal with each. It will not take me more than 25 minutes to deal with each. They are not confirmation. 6 of them. You want more than 5 minutes. Per. No, I don't know what you're going to do after that. But 5 minutes per motion is not much. So you can only extend beyond the 21 days with the permission of the member who laid the motions. And the issue is, no. Huh? Not one. The issue is, you will have to convince me of a reason why I should give permission to extend the period beyond 21 days.
Member from St. Catherine Southwest. Member from St. Catherine Southwest, take your seat, please.
Madam Speaker,
Member from
I will
St. Catherine
complete all
Southwest.
6 in 50 minutes.
That's not your option, member from St. Member
Who's
from
up there?
St. Catherine Southwest, take your seat, please.
Yeah, but
Madam Speaker, I move for the recommittal of the item statement by Minister.
Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, we will have two statements today. I will start by giving a statement on agriculture, and then we will have a statement from the Minister with responsibility for health.
Thank you. House Leader, could you please take the podium for the House Speaker? He will do statement by Minister first, then Minister of Health, Minister Tufton. Member from, I have received a copy of his statement from the Minister of Health. I am not sure I've received a copy or we have circulated for the Minister of Agriculture and Mining.
It should have been circulated.
The House check, please.
All right. So with that said, let us start with the Minister
Member,
of
with your
Health.
permission, the Minister
Yes. Yes, sir.
of Health will commence and we will identify the documents submitted by the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining and have same circulated immediately. The member from St. Catherine Southwest, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, the government continues in its National Hurricane Recovery Program, and I wish to update this Honorable House on the impact to the healthcare system and the response that the sector is leading in collaboration with local and international stakeholder partners. Mr. Speaker, rapid infrastructure assessment has revealed that there has been extensive damage to the health infrastructure across the island. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has developed our Hurricane Melissa response program. Phase 1 of 3 phases is our relief phase that involves the reinstatement of health services in saving lives and the prevention of disease. So the accident and emergency services and all the supporting services in that. Phase 2 will occur over 3 months. Phase 1, will occur over 3 months. Phase 2 of the program has the objective of reestablishing all health services to pre-hurricane levels. And phase 3 is our reconstruction phase where we build back more resilience in our health system based on the lessons learned from Hurricane Melissa. Mr. Speaker, the lion's share of the impact, as can be seen on a map that hopefully will come on the screen, is in the Southern Regional Health Authority and the Northern Regional Health Authority and Western Regional Health Authority. These include the parishes of St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, Manchester, St. James, Hanover, Westmoreland, St. Anne, and Trelawney. I'm not seeing that, but I suspect it may come up at some point. Mr. Speaker, 7 hospitals on the southern and western belt of the island experienced catastrophic damage to roof and infrastructure, as can be seen in the... Okay, so that on the screen shows the path of the hurricane, colleagues, Mr. Speaker, and the most affected areas as outlined in the red, and the not so badly affected, but nevertheless affected area in the lighter reddish color, as outlined on the map. 7 hospitals on the southern and western belt of the island experienced catastrophic damage to roof and infrastructure, as can be seen in the pictures on the screen. These facilities include Black River in St. Elizabeth, Noel Homes in Hanover, Falmouth in Trelawney, Cornwall Regional in St. James, Sablamar in Westmoreland, and St. Anne's Bay in St. Anne. Mr. Speaker, one of our specialized facilities, the Bellevue Hospital, also suffered damages during the passage of the hurricane, including roofing systems failure, damage to biomedical equipment, electrical and sanitation, and the stormwater system. Mr. Speaker, based on our assessment, we have been able to establish operations in the St. Anne's Bay Regional Hospital with the exception of the dietary department. Cornwall Regional has lost bed capacity of about 200 beds. Falmouth Hospital lost some 65% of its roof, severe damage to lab and radiology services. Savlamar with 65% damage to roof along with other flooding damages and storm surge. Black River Hospital has seen the most significant damage, nevertheless, with the hospital being decommissioned in the short term. And of course, the service is relocated, including patients which were transferred, some 71 patients to the Mandeville Regional Hospital. The onslaught of Hurricane Melissa has impacted our efforts at the primary care level also, with more than 100 health centers across 4 regional health authorities experiencing damages ranging from roof, fencing, and water damages, which has severely impacted service delivery to the population in those areas. Mr. Speaker, our primary healthcare system is the bedrock of our service. As such, the ministry is of the mindset that the services are restored in the shortest period of time. To date, our healthcare professionals have aligned themselves to this mission, and already, despite the challenges being faced, and some 7,000 or so health workers have been impacted, 79% of those scheduled to work have turned up for work in the critical primary healthcare services that offer things like maternal and child health, HIV treatment, immunization, and other curative services to be reestablished in these areas. And I want to just pay tribute to our health team, because those who have been impacted have been victims of this, and they have come out nevertheless, despite their own challenges. As part of our overall strategy, phase 1 requires us to implement 5 components. One is the rapid assessment to all health facilities. Secondly, the repair and mobilization of health infrastructure to restore services. Thirdly, our mass environmental health mitigation actions. And fourth, psychosocial and mental health interventions to the population impacted, both staff and citizens, and our staff welfare action, assessing the impact on our healthcare workers and how we can support them to be back on the front line. I wish to provide a quick update on these components. Mr. Speaker, the ministry's collaboration with our partners at the Pan American Health Organization and UNICEF, and supported by the National Health Fund, have begun our national assessment, and we have completed some 40% of that program. At the end of the assessment program, we'll be able to provide better estimates on the program of work that will require for the next phase, which is our rehabilitation phase. So that program is ongoing. However, we do have a sense of what we need to restore services, but more will be needed over the course of the other 2 phases to build back stronger, more resilient, and to ensure that the services are maintained and consistently so. Teams from the NHF, as well as support from Doctors Without Borders and PAHO, have begun to develop bills of quantities that will be used to activate the necessary procurement processes in accordance with the law. And I want to just commend the Pan American Health Organization. They have been part of a team that I have established to provide a benchmark, best practices approach to this very difficult and impactful storm. We have never experienced a Category 5 hurricane. They clearly have experience, and they have been a critical part of the advisory team, as well as a broader team that we have established to support the health build-back. The 5 hospitals in west and southern regions, of those 5, I'm pleased to announce that Cornwall Regional Hospital has been provided with JPS services. And, I saw a coverage yesterday on the state of Cornwall Regional, which painted a very gloomy picture. It's not where it ought to be, but I must say that Cornwall Regional has come a long way since the hurricane. We have already started to restore roofing on the building. In at least, I think up to 50% of roof loss has been recovered. with the work of contractors supported by Doctors Without Borders. We have water that is now more consistent. We have an NWC officer based at Cornwall, and even though it's challenging, and the reference to an unfortunate death and patients be treated beside that particular deceased is unfortunate, and we regret it, but it took place in the accident and emergency ward where these things occur from time to time, where patients are being treated and a deceased is there until the final rites are read and they are removed to the morgue. So while it is unfortunate and not something we want to do, it is something that happens from time to time, whether there's a hurricane or not, just for clarity. Mr. Speaker, water supply has been provided to Cornwall and Falmouth. However, there are still some challenges as outlined. And so we're working with NWC in terms of trucking and storage. We also want to thank the donor community with 3 field hospitals, Mr. Speaker, another very important response to the hurricane. You would have seen that within a week, a field hospital was established in Black River to take off the load that was created based on the decommissioning of the Black River Hospital. And that is almost record deployment, Mr. Speaker, which I want to thank Samaritan's Purse, but also the support of the government, of course, who negotiated and coordinated the quick the deployment of that facility, and also the JDF and others who have been part of this process. I went there up to Sunday evening at night, and it is functioning well with the team, both local team and the NGOs team. And I believe the people of Black River and St. Elizabeth can be assured of health services should anything occur, particularly emergency cases at that field hospital in Black River beside the Black River High School. There are 2 other field hospitals that are being established, and as we speak, the field hospital at the Falmouth Hospital is now commissioned and in service. A similar hospital, this one established by the Spanish government in conjunction with the government of Jamaica. And I want to commend the people of Spain for this. This is a major addition, and I just want to say that these field hospitals are not tents. They may be positioned as such, but they are full-fledged hospitals with operating theaters, pharmacy, blood bank, inpatient care, accident and emergency wards, and facilities for those who are serving the patients in those field hospitals. They have their own kitchen, desalination plant for water. It's a full self-contained facility which provides significant support to the people on the ground. And I really want to just say thanks to the team who have brought them in and established them. There's a third that is coming this week. We expect it on the island about Thursday. That one will be deployed at the Sablamar Hospital compound. Similarly, it will carry the features that these other 2 carry and will offer critical support to the people of Westmoreland and even beyond Westmoreland with a full team, which basically means that we are creating functionality to the people on the ground who need it while we build back the institutions that have been damaged. And I want to commend all those who have been involved in that process. Of the 3 field hospitals, we will have an extra 150 beds, Mr. Speaker, to support the people on the ground.
House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we ask for sufficient time for the member to complete his presentation.
The request is on the floor for sufficient time to the minister for him to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 9 primary care support facilities have been, these are similar to field hospitals, but they are health centers. We call them Tier 1 health facilities, the field hospitals being Tier 2. 9 of these have been deployed across the parishes to improve primary care services, as Mr. Speaker. In other words, where health centers have been very badly damaged, we have either had to find a replacement location or we have deployed a temporary structure which would then substitute for providing primary care in the field. We did one in Black River, and I was with the member from Eastern Westmoreland, and we did another in White House. And we will do a few others across the country, Mr. Speaker, again, to provide community care, because primary care is going to be a critical part of managing in the aftermath of the storm. We have, in collaboration with our partners, it is our target to ensure that all Type 5, 4, and 3 health centers are providing basic services, and we're setting ourselves a target of the 21st of November. So essentially what we have done is map the health centers in the parishes. The temporary rehabilitation may involve a tarpaulin just to keep the elements out and to restore the staff or at least some basic services in these areas. Where those services don't exist, however, we provide a mobile unit to go into those communities, and that includes doctors, but also a mobile pharmacy. And in that regard, I want to just recognize the National Health Fund, which is an agency of the ministry. We have already established a mobile pharmacy to serve communities where persons can't or are not coming out because they have no health centers to visit. We have already gone into communities like Cambridge, Petersfield, Oxford, Spice Grove, Newmarket, Maroontown, Little London, Darlaston, Ramblan, Grange Hill. Some 285 prescriptions have been filled to date across these communities using the mobile service. And we have also been dispensing medications like allergy medication, pain medication for pain, fever, cuts, bruises. So what we have tried to do, Mr. Speaker, in the immediate aftermath is to provide mobility of the health services to communities. Now, do we need to do more? We are ramping up to do more to ensure that more is provided. As it relates to vector control, we are seeing, fortunately, prior to the storm, we saw a reduction in our dengue cases below normal threshold. I want to advise, however, that within 2 to 3 weeks, post the hurricane, we believe we will see an increase in the population of various types of mosquitoes for obvious reasons, and therefore the risk of the dengue virus spreading. We're saying this because the Aedes aegypti mosquito, we expect the population of that particular vector to expand. To deal with this, Mr. Speaker, we are deploying more vector workers throughout the country, but particularly to the impacted areas, some 700 temporary vector workers, in addition to our permanent workers, are being engaged. That process has commenced, and what we will see is a stepped up level of activity in terms of fogging. In fact, the ministry will continue its program of oiling of stagnant water in over 150 communities that have been targeted for this week, with over 500 communities expected to be treated over the next 2 weeks. ULV machines and other fogging equipment have been increased to support UNICEF, which is involved, UNICEF, and over 10,000 Natular tablets and other vector control paraphernalia being distributed to regions. An additional 80 thermal foggers and 40,000 drum covers will be procured over the next 2 weeks. So there is a comprehensive program around vector management in anticipation of the mosquito population expanding, particularly where persons don't have electricity, they can't fan them away, they have to keep windows open, doors open. We understand that is going to be a real challenge, and we just want to encourage those who can buy repellent and to provide some sort of self-protection so to do, but the government is very much aware of this and will be in the field giving support. In terms of water and food safety, with the support of UNICEF, Mr. Speaker, the ministry has developed a health, nutrition, water, sanitation, and hygiene plan called a WASH plan, The plan involves several components supporting the provision of primary and secondary care services for pregnant and lactating women and infants, including provision of medical supplies and immunization support, prevention of mosquito-borne illnesses, mental health and psychosocial support interventions, and risk communication and community engagement interventions. So there is a plan called WASH, the acronym, to address the concerns that I've outlined. Food safety is one of the 5 priority areas targeted by the ministry, which means an assessment of critical establishments such as large food manufacturing facilities, warehouses, cold storage, high-risk establishments such as abattoirs, butcheries, poultry farms, markets, supermarkets, restaurants, food and milk processing plants being targeted. Mr. Speaker, as of November 9, 2025, approximately 5,052 food handling establishments were assessed post the hurricane, with some 2,794 or 55% being satisfactory, with which 100 were cited for violation. 5,661 kilograms of food was condemned. It's a very difficult decision, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, to those who clearly would have invested in their food or their establishment and are being told by the public health inspectors that you need to discard. The absolute reality is that if storage is not proper, then it poses a risk to the population, and in the interest of health, we have to take action. So I crave the indulgence of those who may be impacted negatively, but it is a reality, and the risk could be far greater in terms of the negative side than to take the risk of consuming spoiled food. Additionally, large farms and food processing farms were visited, and we continue to monitor to ensure safe food to the population, because foodborne diseases can be a major factor in the immediate aftermath of this kind of storm. In terms of water safety, we are working with our local and international partners, including PAHO, UNICEF, Red Cross, and a consortium of disaster agencies have commenced a strategic water safety intervention to manage risk associated with the passage of the storm. The interventions include supplemental portable water supply to benefit NWC distribution networks, and we have established that in Lucy, in a number of areas actually, working with those teams. Water treatment systems being placed to support impacted hospitals, and we are installing some systems to provide support for the hospitals, but we also need to do more in terms of the health centers, not just for the health centers, but in conjunction with our colleagues and other partner agencies, the communities where residents reside and have unreliable access to water. Distribution of water tablets in communities and hygiene kits provided for communities across the country. In addition, water safety assessment of primary healthcare facilities that were damaged, of which 5 healthcare facilities assessed to date using the smart healthcare facility model. We are now replacing those water facilities. What we want to do, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, in every health center, we have 325. We want to ensure that there is electricity generating capacity. Most already have a generator, so we're doing inspections, water storage, adequate water storage, and a reliable source of water, which is critical to treatment and to care. And then, of course, that the staff and the basic equipment are in place. Even if we have to put a tarpaulin over the roof for the time being, the critical thing is that the service is available. I want to turn to mental health and psychosocial support. We understand that the hurricane has induced mental health strain on our population. And I've been out there and I've spoken to persons, and, you know, it is really tragic that there are persons who are just at a loss as to what to do, having seen their homes, you know, just collapse around them and all their personal possession. It really is a sad sight. It makes you, you know, I saw the member from Eastern Westmoreland speak last week, and I must tell you, it was touching. And I know you're not a man to emotions too often. Certainly in your normal routine, right? Certainly on the political hustings, put it that way. But You were crying too? The member from Western Westmoreland, he said he was crying too. I think he wants a mobile pharmacy also. We'll give you one, don't worry. No, but seriously though, I saw the member speak last week, and you know, and I'm saying this for my own personal self too. You know, there's humanity in all of us. No matter how bold and brave we put out a strong face, there is a point as representatives where we feel the need to, it really is emotional that to see the people that you represent not having the basic or losing it, what they have. And when they work hard for it too, it's even worse. And there are just so many cases of this because of this storm. And it really is tragic. So they need support. And a big part of our outreach is going to have to be to listen, to empathize, to sympathize, to give advice, to give support. Even the basic material possession, the food that we provide in the short term, is not enough to compensate for a person's personal possession that they have lost. And I think if there is ever a time that this parliament needs to unite, come together, and show common understanding and outreach, it is around giving support to those Jamaicans who have suffered in this time of significant grief. And I see the trips going into the affected areas. I just want to say, as Minister of Health, while you carry the food packages, maybe we just need to sit down and talk to people a little bit, spend a little time with them and encourage them and give them hope, because that's all we can give at this point while we work to make things better. And it will get better. So the mental health and psychosocial support rapid needs assessment have been completed in the 4 regional health authorities. Psychosocial support to healthcare workers who have been affected. There are many of the workers on the front line who have been. The plan is for further in-person support and virtually through Jamaica Psychological Association and Jamaica Psychiatric Association. At the same time, PAHO is providing technical support through a visiting mental health and psychosocial support expert who is assisting the mental health and substance abuse unit in coordinating this kind of response in communities. Essentially, what we're going to do between the public health workers, the community health aid, the vector workers, and the mental health teams, we are essentially sensitizing that army of about 3,000 healthcare workers. When they go in the field, it's not just about vector control or food spoilage and inspection. It's also about showing some understanding for those who have been impacted, who they will have to come in contact with, and showing the empathy and support to them. That alone means something, and we want to encourage that. Beyond that, it is to elevate the concerns to the experts once there's a need so to do. So it's about listening, observing, and reporting back in the first instance. In terms of shelter surveillance, on November 9, 2025, the Ministry of Health and Wellness conducted a surveillance on 107 shelters. At the time, it was hosting some 1,320 persons. Our support includes the provision of primary healthcare services, especially to the most vulnerable, which are our pregnant and lactating mothers, children, and the elderly. Our intervention has resulted in the provision of critical support in the form of food safety, water safety, mental and psychosocial support, as well as providing the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development with advice on the strengthening of infection prevention and control interventions within the shelter space. The Ministry of Health so far received no unusual reports of outbreak of diseases in the wake of Hurricane Melissa. Surveillance team within the public health system have been actively monitoring health trends with special attention to waterborne and vector-borne illnesses that often emerge after such weather patterns. Just want to pause quickly to say, Mr. Speaker, you know, in these instances, and we have seen them before, everybody has become an expert. And it's easy for us to hold on to rumors, people giving their best advice when that advice is suboptimal because they don't have the knowledge. And then everybody grabs it and runs with it. And I've seen on social media, for example, talk about disease being, you know, different types of major outbreaks in different parts. The Ministry of Health is the authority on the challenge, and we will report if there's an area of concern. We're not going to hide it from the public. In the meantime, every other source must be questioned or approached with caution, because that just fuels panic, and that can impact the recovery process, whether it's tourism or just commerce generally. The ministry continues to urge citizens, however, to practice proper hygiene, use safe water, and report any symptoms of illness to the nearest facility. Closing, Mr. Speaker, I want to just touch on staff welfare. Ministry of Health and Wellness, of course, we empathize with our hard frontline workers and support staff, 7,000 numbering approximately in the areas that have been impacted. And we are now developing an approach to giving them support. Now, I've spoken today, this week I spoke to the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association, who rightfully so expressed concern, and they also put out a release in the public space about their doctors, their members. And, you know, I have no issues with that, because I think that's their job to represent the best interests of their members. But there are so many others who are not doctors, but critical to the health system. And indeed, outside of the health system, civil servants, policemen, teachers, all of whom are victims once they were in that corridor. And we have to recognize this. Now, that's why the government, through the Most Honorable Prime Minister, announced a number of measures to give support. And I'm sure he will, and others will say more on the specifics of that support. What we are doing in health, we are providing on-site access to necessities like food, bottled water, hygiene, kits, and bedding for staff who may be stranded or unable to go home. And that process is in train. We are arranging transportation for staff to get to and from the hospital, especially if personal vehicles are damaged or gas stations are closed. We're offering flexibility with work schedules so employees have time to deal with personal loss, repair homes, or take mental health breaks. And this is important. A lot of the missions that come are deployed in a manner to give staff a break so that they can tend to the personal challenges that they have. And that's very important. And we are enforcing sufficient rest periods and providing dedicated break areas for staff to recover from the demanding physical and emotional toll, as well as providing that level of psychosocial support where needed. It's not a perfect response, and it is emerging and evolving to get to an optimal level, but that's the plan as of now. In addition to that, we're assessing the extent of the damage by staff members, categorizing the damages, and we will make an attempt to support how they receive benefits under the wider government program that has been announced. So the NHD housing program that the Prime Minister announced of 3.5 million. We want to know how many of our members lost their roofs and what we could do to make some representation for them to benefit on the programs of that kind. And there are other programs. So we do have a plan for our staff as we thank them for their work. Mr. Speaker, in times of adversity, the healthcare team has always shown resilience, and this opportunity has been no different. Many have really lost everything, really, and risen to the occasion nevertheless. And I want to say a big thank you to them on behalf of the Jamaican people and those persons that they are serving. We are strong believers in partnership as I close, and I want to use the opportunity to thank the many collaborators, almost every single Jamaican, firstly, who have expressed support for those impacted in the particular areas, who have given support in one way, shape, or form, and to our overseas collaborators. PAHO, which has helped us to frame the emergency response, UNICEF, the other UN bodies, but bilateral partners, Spain, the US, China, so many others, and the NGO community who have really brought in professionals who we have vetted and created a forum for them to be guided under one umbrella of coordination, and who have been doing a good job so far. We do expect that ultimately we have to stand on our own, and the cycle of this type of support is not permanent, And so the intention is to move quickly with the assessment and the build back so that Jamaica can have a better and more resilient health system, and Jamaicans will benefit from this. We will keep you informed, colleagues and those in the country, Mr. Speaker, as we seek to build on what we have started. Thank you very much.
Member from St. Catherine Southeastern, you're the spokesperson on health. You have the floor.
Literally.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I address this noble House today in response to the Honourable Minister's statement, not to critique or engage in rebuttal, but to recognise, first of all, the hard work of the team at the Ministry of Health and the regional health authorities during this once-in-700-year event, and to augment the call for unity, empathy, and commitment to the amelioration of the conditions of our brothers and sisters most impacted by Hurricane Melissa. The hurricane has caused untold damage, and debates continue as to the adequacy of our disaster preparedness. History has taught us that plague follows natural disasters. We cannot fully prepare for a natural disaster, but we have the window of opportunity today to prepare for and possibly avert a public health disaster in the upcoming months. Dysentery, dengue, pneumonia, leptospirosis, and typhoid are already here in Jamaica. Malaria, yellow fever, and cholera are possible where people are living under tarpaulins, drinking river water, and practicing open defecation. In the midst of our cleanup and rebuilding efforts, be mindful that every action has a collateral benefit of preventing further loss of lives. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fix not just healthcare, but the social determinants of health. But to do so, we must do it as one people, together. Everyone must help. Everyone must be allowed to help. And hegemony over decisions, donations, and deeds has no place in Jamaica today. Mr. Speaker, let us not be fooled by well wishes and token support. We must fix ourselves. Our former colonial masters have sent us just over £2 million, or 0.01% of aid to Ukraine, a region to which it has zero historical ties, save for the Crimean War. During said war, it was Jamaica who sent tangible aid to their forces through Mary C. Cole. Whereas we appreciate every ounce of aid, especially from the thousands sending their widow's mite, but the aid from those who can afford to solve our problems is simply not enough to ward off an impending disaster. Again, we must fix ourselves together. We will be required to go above and beyond the call of duty to build back better than before, to build back stronger. Healthcare workers have lost their homes and possessions and are still required to be frontline workers while suffering from shell shock. They must be prioritized for any relief and reconstruction. I recognize the minister's approach for that, and I am fully behind that. suggestion. I will go further, though, by saying that homeless healthcare workers must be housed as soon as possible, so they do not have to worry about where they will shower and sleep while providing empathetic care. Public health must be a priority in order to stave off potential outbreaks. Potable water and proper sanitation cannot continue to be luxuries in disaster-hit areas. If what obtains cannot be addressed post-haste, then we must evacuate the affected from the petri dishes they once called homes. Healthcare workers alone cannot shoulder the burden of distributing crucial public education, hygienic kits, and water treatment tablets. We must engage the church, we must engage the justices of the peace, and community-based organizations, and we must engage the constituencies' machineries.
House Leader.
The member time for speaking has expired in how much? 10? 5? 5? He has asked for, we asked it to be extended for 5 minutes to complete.
The request is on the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against, the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we must engage the constituencies' machineries that are just trickling down from a competitive general election. Cumulatively, these institutions can identify and reach those who cannot access health care or the necessary information and resources to prevent diseases. Public education on water treatment, proper hygiene, vector control, and the recognition of the signs and symptoms of the expected diseases must permeate every medium, with every volunteer carrying the message, not just burnt-out healthcare workers. It is the duty of every Jamaican to spread the words necessary to avoid a public health catastrophe. It is the duty of each one to reach one with material and emotional support. We are all traumatized from the hurricane, and post-traumatic stress will unmask or exacerbate anxiety, depression, even outside of the hardest hit areas. Mental health reform across the land must be undertaken immediately, and public education coupled with access to counseling services, only recently highlighted by the recent spike in suicides, should be island-wide. Melissa has shown our healthcare sector to be fragile. In rebuilding the health facilities damaged, the goal is to build a resilient healthcare system. But I challenge you, Honorable Minister, to build a healthcare system that is anti-fragile. One that is not just resilient to stressors and disasters, but in the true sense of the term, anti-fragility, overcomes and becomes stronger through built-in mechanisms that recognize deficits and appropriately address them. I challenge the executive to not do this alone. Embrace the overtures for help from all segments of society in getting boots on the ground. The spirit of voluntarism is high in Jamaica. Harness the power of our own local good Samaritans to reach those who you do not have the capacity to reach. The danger of not having all hands on deck is that those whose status cannot afford them a life raft will be the first to perish if the ship should sink. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Westmoreland Central. Be reminded, you are to ask a question.
That's a three-part question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I just want to say to the Minister, on behalf of the constituents of Central West Florida, just firstly, along with donors and the Minister, it is very important to say that we are appreciative of the fact that the next field hospital will be set up in the Savlamar area. But we all understand how devastating it was in those particular areas. My first question will be related to the phases you mentioned. I remember I said the first phase, the relief phase, that will take 3 months. The second phase, which is reestablishing the centers and hospitals to pre-hurricane levels. I notice a timeline was not given for that. So I'm going to ask you, what is the timeline to reestablish the health facilities to pre-hurricane levels? And I ask that because, especially with health centers in Central West Florida like Petersfield, Williamsfield, and Cornwall Mountain that were seriously devastated by Hurricane Melissa, we want to know how quickly those centers will be re-established. The second part of that question will have to do with the mobile units. In the statement, it stated that the Petersfield area, where that center is, will have benefited from the mobile units. We want to know when the mobile units will go into Williamsfield and into the Cornwall Mountain areas, because those areas are more remote, further away from South. So those persons will have a larger need to have the mobile units coming into those particular areas. Gully Banks is right beside the hospital. The final question has to do with the health workers. And I notice it stated many things read the health workers, the support that will be given to them. But when I was at the South Hospital recently, they stated that over 75% of the staff suffered significant damage. So yes, we are appreciative of the announcement made, re-support. But what they really want to know, because I heard you also state that in the wider programs, you're trying to see how they will benefit. But what you want to know, if there will be, or if there could be any special allocation outside of the wider allocations, specifically for our health workers, especially those are the questions.
Unless you want to take over. Minister, are you going to take them one by one or 2 by 2? All right, so you're going to take the member from questions from Central Westmoreland first? All right, go ahead.
Okay, so first thing, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member who spoke first. Thank him for his measured response, which I thought was sober and is in keeping with the theme. No, it's a compliment in the theme of the need for unity and the response to this, where many people have been damaged. So I do accept his areas of emphasis as a constructive criticism or constructive observation, because he's correct that the issues of building back stronger, of assisting the healthcare workers, of engaging as many persons as possible, these are all very valid points, and we have attempted so to do. In fact, we hosted a forum at one of the hotels in Kingston, which was made public, of all the groups that were interested to collaborate. We had over 30 NGOs, bilateral, multilateral partners, and some local interests, business community. And through that collaboration, we have established a window where persons who are interested to participate can engage and be a part of that process. So we will continue so to do until we overcome this particular issue. The issue of building back stronger with more resilience is a critical part of that process. And I want to dovetail that with a question about the second phase and timing from the member from Central Westmoreland. Part of the reason why you can't really give a definitive time for the phase 2, because phase 2 will be determined to some extent by what happens in phase 1. So the detailed assessment of the impact of the storm on the infrastructure will determine how long it will take for you to build out that infrastructure. And what we are hoping to do at the end of phase one is to have a more comprehensive assessment of cost, length of time. Remember, now you have a procurement process. So it could last less than a year. It could last a year. And in particular, if you're going to deviate towards the more resilient infrastructure that the member who spoke first spoke about. So it's a function of the timing. As it relates to the healthcare workers, we are doing what we can do at this point to provide critical support. It may not be enough or what is desired in an absolute way, but it is what can be done now while we try to assess what the damage is. The specific request for something special for healthcare workers is a request I'm sure you'll get by the police officers, the teachers, and all others who have been impacted. And this is not to devalue the impact of healthcare workers. It's just to say that until we have a better assessment as to what that damage is, we will have we will have to remain in keeping with a short-term response until we can give a longer-term response. And in terms of the mobile clinic member, I would recommend, and I'll put you in touch with the parish health officer, because the response on the ground is a function of the parish health officer. In fact, when I met with the member from Eastern Westmoreland, I introduced him to the administrator for the parish, and I indicated that they need to work together so that you can help to direct that traffic. And that's one way that the MPs will be involved. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, Section 32 of the Standing Order speaks to a member who wishes to speak or to raise a question should rise. And so we will be guided by the Standing Order as the situation is. Member from Central Westmoreland. No, just one at a time. We don't need everybody. Eastern Westmoreland. Everybody don't have to stand at the same time. One.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, I want to thank you for your visit to Eastern Westmoreland. And I hope that doesn't offend the House. You're the only minister who has visited and has invited me along. And I would encourage some of your colleagues to I would encourage some of your colleagues
Since I was
to
not
adopt
in the
a similar
House,
disposition.
since I was not in the House,
Yes, we're back to
when
normal.
you are you
Question.
are you at question time, member?
Yes.
Okay. So I think you know the rules of this House.
I do, Madam Speaker. I do. But
So please abide by the rules.
I will, Madam Speaker, I will. But I still thank the Minister nonetheless. Minister, what is the mechanism that is in place for all the groups that are volunteering, and some of them may even be prescribing their own medication? What is the mechanism that is in place to dovetail that so that there is adequate follow-up of those persons? So a volunteer group of doctors come in and they see a person, and the person has a chronic illness that will require follow-up treatment. They see them. We need to work out that mechanism to ensure that they can be referred into the system formally so that further care can be given to that individual. So that's the first question. The second one is around communicable versus non-communicable diseases. In terms of the non-communicable diseases, I have a concern that this is a high-stress environment that these persons have been placed in, and quite a bit of them are not able to get the care. The mobile unit is a very good attempt to get to some of these individuals. But I wanted to ask whether or not the regular medications that they use, if they would be able to gain access to those free of charge, of course, because some of them would not be in a position at this time to pay for anything at all. And in relation to the communicable diseases, the need to clear up the environment is one that needs to be prioritized. I am very concerned about how persons are disposing of human waste currently. Very concerned. And I'm wondering if it is not possible for us to look at putting some portable facilities at strategic points so that persons can relieve themselves with some amount of dignity. And to ensure that in terms of the next question, could there be a discussion with the tertiary institutions who train counselors and psychologists? Could there be a discussion with them to mobilize a group of volunteers to head to some of the hardest hit areas and start that process of counseling some of these members? Because as a representative from one of the areas that was devastated, I can tell you that it is playing with even my mind, and I consider myself a very strong individual. But just the reality of getting up on a daily basis and seeing that level of devastation, I am wondering if we cannot mobilize a group of volunteers from these tertiary institutions, some of the retired persons, and get them into the community so that they can start the counseling process. And the final question is in relation to deaths. I didn't hear any mention of deaths in the statement. Deaths both of humans and animals. If we are not able to remove the carcasses of some of these animals, that is in and of itself going to lead to another disaster. And so I think in as short a time as possible, we need to be able to come up with a plan as to how we are going to get rid of those. There are sections of Westmoreland and elsewhere that you have several cows, goats, and those things that have died, dogs, and they're just lying in the community. Swollen flies gathering around them. If you don't treat with that situation urgently, it is going to lead to some problems. I wanted your attention to that. Thank you.
This is view and use of John first.
Minister, would you be so kind as to take all the notations down and respond once? The next member from St. James South. The member from Hanover Eastern.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Minister, what are the plans you have for vector control for Forest and Chigwell? Those are two communities that have been marooned by water since the hurricane. There is a stench now in the community. We don't know if it's dead bodies or dead animals. So I'm asking for your urgent attention. I mentioned them last week in Parliament, Chigwell and Forest. Chigwell and Forest. Thank you.
Members, I'm not going to spend the time going through again the standing orders. The standing orders actually require that you do not turn on your mic until you're acknowledged. That's how it works. If you turn them on, it is not going to work. So the member Clarendon Northern, you may go ahead, member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, can you tell us what are your plans for the communities of Anderson Town and Bagole, who are also marooned, and the water is not totally receded, and I listened to your statement and you spoke about vector control. What methodologies are you going to be using to control vectors there? And are you going to take into consideration the citizens, especially the elderly citizens, who may have respiratory challenges as they fight through this challenging moment? So that is one. Two, there has been reports to me that there's a dengue outbreak in the community of Yes, there are reports to me that there's a dengue outbreak in the community of Morgan's Forest. So we need to have urgent attention to those areas, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I'm enjoying myself too, Member Brownberg. Enjoying myself too. So members, you're required to keep your seat. When you stand, the first person to catch the speaker's eye is the person who would be acknowledged. And then you turn on your mic. Once you do that, you will actually have no challenges. For those who are watching us in television land, our parliament seems very disruptive and disorderly because they do not appreciate what is happening with you over there in respect of how you handle the mic. And so members, if you follow the rules of the parliament, you have no challenges at all. Respectfully, if you follow the rules. And so members who complain that they don't want to be having to raise their hands, it is the reason why we reverted to the exact wording of the standing order, which is that you stand. And so myself and Deputy Speaker will actually be abiding by exactly that. Yeah, so I'm having fun with the member who is waving. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. So the member from St. James South, you're acknowledged. Please turn your mic on. Thank you very much, member.
But his mic is all right. Thank you, Madam Speaker. He's standing. He's that short. I'm sure. He is standing. Minister. Okay. Minister, are you aware that the clinic at Roehampton is flat? The one at Catadupa, Maroontown, Garlands, Welcome Hall, Cambridge, those are perhaps 40 to 50% destroyed. I heard you speak earlier about bringing some tarpaulin to some of those. I don't think tarpaulin can help with the damage that they've sustained. I don't know if you've received the reports yet, but we urgently need a field clinic in at least 2 parts of the constituency, given the wide geographic spread of South St. James. It takes up half of St. James. You may need to put one on the Maroontown, Garland, Niagara side and another over by Cambridge. I heard you report earlier that you sent a mobile clinic into Cambridge and Maroontown. It's the first news to me. In fact, I had Mama's Mission and Dr. Dawes on Sunday, on Sunday operating a mobile clinic in Maroontown, and they saw over 100 people. So I'm surprised to hear that that mobile clinic was there a day or two before and so many people hadn't seen it. So I'm asking, Minister, if when the decisions are taken about sending in relief, whether it is medical or food or whatever, if the political representatives, the people's representatives, can be so informed so they can further inform the people. And more importantly, I've been trying to get my mother's medication. She's hypertensive in Montego Bay, and most of the pharmacies, as you know, are still closed because they have no water, they have no electricity. I've become a drug distributor, yes, a drug distributor. Every week,
I think you are all fully aware, you know. I think you're all fully aware.
Yes. Obviously, it's legal drugs. I am the queen of the South. But Minister, every week that I come into Kingston, I'm taking back bag loads of prescription for the constituents. So I'm asking Minister, if you can help us through the NHF to get a mobile pharmacy going around the constituency to relieve me of the burden. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, if I may, the questions are piling up and I may actually miss a few of them. I'll try to be as efficient as possible. So in terms of the first question from the member from Eastern Westmoreland, I have to respond on behalf of my colleagues that when you see me, you see my colleagues and the Prime Minister. So we work together as a team. Well, let me just say that. But secondly, I appreciate the compliments and so on, but just want to make that point. Secondly, though, in terms of the volunteers, remember, in terms of the volunteers, there is a mechanism, it's an important point, there's a mechanism to vet all the volunteers that are in the field representing health service delivery. We have a registration, having looked and validated documentation, and that goes to the nursing council or the medical council, as the case may be, and then those persons are given the approval to operate, to act in the field. These are persons, of course, coming in from outside. I mean, you have private physicians that would be registered anyway. So no one should be given health services, prescription, giving medical advice unless they are certified so to do. And there is a temporary approval process that we go through. If you see that happening or sense that is happening, then please send us the information on that. And there are many that we have certified. So that's the process that we go through. In terms of NCDs, non-communicable and communicable diseases, that's what the pharmacy, mobile pharmacies is there for, to address concerns around the chronic cases, people with hypertension, diabetes, and so on. Now, this 3-month period is intended to regularize and get back the pharmacies that are closed down in operation. So it's just a short-term measure to address that. So for the member in South St. James, I take the point. I don't know why you didn't see them. This is what was reported to me. The NHF leads on that. But I do agree with you that you, as the political representative, should be informed and you should help that process. So I will certainly report back to them to ensure that when they're in your area. Now, I do know about... Sorry? No, she said that she didn't see the NHF mobile units. In terms of the health centers that are not functional, yes, we have the report. I showed you a diagram where we mapped all the health centers. Where there is going to have to be a long-term solution, we will put a temporary solution. That may be in any building in the area that is standing, or it could be a tent-type structure. So if you haven't seen one yet, what I'll recommend is that the parish health officer have a discussion with you and just outline what the plans are for your area. And more than likely, I will also find some time to visit your area at some point, because South St. James, northeast St. Elizabeth, northwest St. Elizabeth, eastern Westmoreland, southwest St. Elizabeth are, to my mind, based on what I've seen, certainly from a health perspective, the disaster zone. Those are the areas where the storm had the greatest impact. So I think it's important that we ensure that the citizens are served in that area. In terms of the communicable diseases, which includes the dead carcasses and so on, remember, from eastern Westmoreland. Remember, we work with a team. So we have the public health officers who do the visitation, and they are instructed not just to look at food, but to look at dead animals and whatever else that may, solid waste, anything that would be a health concern. We work with the National Solid Waste Agency, NSWMA. We work with the local government ministry. We work with the other agencies of the state. So where we do our jobs and we observe, we pass on that information. And there is a protocol around how to treat with dead carcasses. In terms of university mobilization and other volunteers, there is a website, Minister Grange, remind me of the name of the website. supportjamaica.gov.jm. And you can volunteer on that site. Once you register, we assess and we distribute the names based on where people and how people want to volunteer. And then Ween Health also have a site. So we welcome anybody. What is important is that we streamline and coordinate, because we run the risk of creating chaos by just allowing a free for all and all who may should come. And it doesn't work. So there has to be a central hub, which is what we do. We have university students who have volunteered, by the way, and we're going to make use of them by bringing them to support the psychosocial element of the response. I think that, the issue of the communities with the vector, there's an assessment at the level of the parish where we determine the maroon communities and how we access those. Interestingly, we have airlifted at least 6 or 7 patients from the ground zero zone in Westmoreland, in St. Elizabeth, to Manchester or to University Hospital, and have saved lives in the process during the immediate aftermath. And also the JDF primarily has rescued persons who have been marooned in, bringing them down to the flats to institutions. So that is happening now. And if you have a case where that is needed, we can respond, because JDF does have the capacity to do and have been doing that. I think that's it. I hope I remember everything. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Your area. Yeah, so all the areas that have been impacted and have been marooned in or blocked off, we do one of two things. We can airlift to access. In fact, Samaritan's Purse has 2 airlift capacity vehicles, 2 helicopters. One, a smaller one that is used to go into the areas, because the tier 1 health centers are 2 types. There is a fixed and there's a mobile. Part of the mobility is to go into communities and even in areas where you can't reach by road. So if you have a community as a representative that has that problem, and the team have not yet identified with the problem, you can just reach out and we will find a way to get there. The same approach in terms of the vector. You're going to see a lot more happening, because we have given instruction to hire both the temporary workers combined with the permanent workers, and also provide for overtime so that they work longer hours.
Minister, I would appreciate if we do not continue this practice of having members ask questions that they're not asking on the mic. It was the practice last week and it's continuing this week. It should not happen. It should not happen. It should not happen. And the reason is, very often the person who you break each time, when they're answering the question, the rest of us have no idea what it is that they're speaking to. You don't need to stand. The Prime Minister did so last week, and it is continuing this week. It's a bad practice for the ministers to be responding to questions from the floor when the rest of us have no idea sometimes what that is about. And for the persons, when the speaker is communicating, one would expect respectfully that you would listen. It would actually help in how you function afterwards. I hope you don't want me to sanction you. Minister, please have members ask their questions, take the notation. And there are times when the opposition leader would ask a question and the leeway is granted. But what is happening is every member has started to just ask whatever they feel like from the floor. It cannot work. Does a member from the member from Clarendon? Member from Clarendon North, please take your seat. So the member who was asking a while ago is the member who stood from Clarendon North. What you could do is take a look at the standing orders. There is a process for follow-up questions in respect of the questions you asked before.